Welcome to Lecture 1 of this course, Grammatical Rules and Systems. In this lecture we will begin with the definition of grammar. So what is grammar? We hear a lot about this term. There are many definitions for grammar, but we will take this simple definition. Grammar is defined as the rules that say how words are combined, arranged and changed to show different meanings. If we have these words, for example, teacher, student, question, and asked, how can we take these words and have a certain meaning and convey a certain meaning to the listener? So we use grammatical rules to combine these words. So we have, for example, this sentence here. The teacher asked the student a question. So through the rules of grammar, we arrange these words, we combine them, and showed a certain meaning. A teacher asking a student a question. We can also change the arrangement of these words to convey a different meaning. So we have the same words, but we change the arrangement to show another meaning. So here, the student is asking the teacher a question. So you see, through the changing of the arrangement of these words, we came up with a different meaning. So this is the use of grammar. Without grammar, we will only have words. We will only have teacher, we will only have student, question, asked. We don't know how to convey meaning unless we combine these words into meaningful sentences through the use of the rules of grammar. The largest unit of grammar is the sentence. So we will now move on and take a look at sentences. So what is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words that express a statement. It expresses, this group of words expresses a statement. It expresses a question. It expresses a command or exclamation. So these are the four different types of sentences: statement, question, command, or exclamation. A sentence can consist of one or more clauses. So depending on the complexity of the sentence, it can have one clause and it can have more than one clause. Usually sentences has at least one subject and verb. So one subject and one verb in sentences usually. Types of sentences. So as I mentioned here, we have four types of sentences. The first type is the statement. So what is a statement? It is a sentence which gives information. Okay, so sentences that give us information are called statements, and we can call them sometimes declarative. Declarative sentences are sentences that give us information. So if you look at the example here, he is studying. So he is studying is a declarative sentence. It is a statement giving us information about someone doing something, someone studying. So we have this information now thanks to this sentence. So this sentence gave us a piece of information, and that's why we call it a statement or a declarative sentence. We can make statements either affirmative or negative. So for example, the first example here, I have found a mistake already. This is an affirmative sentence. Okay, so it gives us a certain information and in the affirmative. So it is an affirmative sentence. Look at the second example here. I have not found any mistakes. Okay, this is a negative sentence. Okay, it denies the information that was affirmed in the first sentence. So it negates the fact that this person found any mistakes. So I have not found any mistakes yet. If you compare the two sentences, you will notice that we have certain words like not, any, and yet. The use of words may change depending on whether your sentence is affirmative or negative. So there are certain words that come frequently with negative constructions, there are other words that come frequently with affirmative constructions. So these are the two types of statements, affirmative and negative. The second type of sentences is the question. So a question is a sentence which asks for information. We said that the statement gives us information. The question asks for information. It wants people or the listener to give information. So it asks for for information or can make a request. So asking for information and making requests is the function of the question. And we can call questions sometimes interrogative. So interrogative sentences are questions like the ones you have in the two examples here. Is he studying? So here we have a question asking for information. So asking, is this person studying or not? So it requires an answer. It requires that we supply it with information. So this is a question. We can also say, can I go study? Okay, this is a request. Someone is asking for permission to go study. So this is the other function of the question, making requests. And you notice here we use the modal can to form this question, can I go study? The third type of sentences is the command, which is a sentence which gives orders or makes a suggestion. And we call this type of sentences imperative. So it is called imperative or command. We have two examples here. The first one is go study. Okay, go study. The speaker is giving commands or giving a command to the listener. He's telling him to go do something. He's telling him to go and study. And a command can also be a warning, okay, or a suggestion, as we mentioned here. So be careful. Be careful. When you tell someone to be careful, you are making a suggestion. You're trying to warn him of something, and you tell him to watch out, to be careful. This is also a command or an imperative. You'll notice there is an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. Be careful. Exclamation mark here. The use of the exclamation mark can also be used with another type of sentences. So it can be used with commands, and it can also be used with our final sentence type, the exclamation. So an exclamation sentence is a sentence which is used to express the speaker's feeling or attitude. So if the speaker is trying to convey his feeling towards a certain thing or an attitude towards a certain thing, he will use exclamation sentences. For example, what a lovely day. So this is an exclamation. The speaker is saying, well, this day is lovely, this day is nice, he likes, he's enjoying himself in this day. So this is an expression of his feeling. What a lovely day. Excellent as well. Okay, this is also an exclamation. Also, you will notice the exclamation point at the end of each of these sentences. Okay, you say this is excellent. You like this thing. You like some person's achievement, or some person's did something that you find excellent. You tell him excellent. This is an exclamation. You convey your feeling to him through these sentences, through exclamation sentences. Okay, we'll have this exercise, simple one here. You need to identify the type of each of the following sentences. So you have 4 choices here: A, statement; B, question; C, command; and D, exclamation. So we'll have 5 sentences here. You need to decide what is the type of each one of these sentences. So let's look at the first one. How often do you come here? What is the type of this sentence? How often do you come here? You'll notice that we have a question mark at the end, and the purpose of the sentence is to inquire for information. So this is a question. So the answer of number 1 is B. a question. 2. How interesting this article is. At first glance, you will think that this sentence is a question. You have a question word, how, and you might think that this is a question, but if you look carefully here, you will see that the verb is at the end. Okay, it doesn't come before the subject. This article is the subject, and the verb doesn't come before it. And you will also notice an exclamation point at the end of the sentence. So this is an exclamation sentence. The person is saying this article is interesting. Okay, so as we said before, what a lovely day. So this is also exclamation, how interesting this article is. The speaker is telling us that this article is interesting. This is his feeling that the article is interesting. 3. Hurry up before the train's departure. Here we have an exclamation point at the end, but don't rush. This is not an exclamation sentence. You'll notice here we have the word hurry and up. It is telling the listener to do something. It is a command. So the speaker is telling the listener to go and hurry up to catch the train before it departs, before it leaves. So number 3, hurry up before the train's departure is a command. So the answer for number 3 is C. Number 4, how interesting is this article? You'll notice that there is some similarity between number 2 and number 4. So how interesting this article is, and number 4, how interesting is this article. The difference here is the verb. So you notice that the verb is comes before the subject in number 4. And you will also notice that there is a question mark at the end. So this is a question here. So how interesting is this article? The speaker is asking us a question. He wants us to, or he wants the listener to tell him about this article. Is it interesting or not? So number 4 is, of course, a question, and compared to number 2, which is an exclamation. So number 2 is an exclamation, D, and number 4 is a question, B. Number 5, this article is very interesting. So this sentence gives us a piece of information about the article. So it is an interesting article. Now we know, thanks to the sentence, that the article is interesting. So it provided us with a piece of information. So it is a statement, A. The answer here is A. Okay, we'll move on to simple, compound, and complex sentences. So we will look at each of these types in detail in the coming lectures, but this is a bit of an introduction to these types. So a simple sentence is like the example you have here. The man is here. We have a subject, we have a verb, and we have an adverb here. So this is a simple sentence. The second type here is the compound sentence. Here in the example, the man is here and he wants to see you. So and is called a coordinator, and it forms a compound sentence. So we have actually 2 sentences combined into one. The man is here, and the other one is the man wants to see you, he wants to see you, and we combine them using and he wants to see you. The third type is complex sentences. So in this type we have a dependent clause, a subordinate clause that is inserted in the simple sentence we have in one. So in one we had the man is here. We can also insert a clause using a subordinate marker. The man that wants to see you is here. The man that wants to see you is here. We will discuss these sentences, as I said, compound and complex sentences, in detail in the coming lectures. So we will come back to them in the coming lectures, inshallah. Okay, we'll move on to discuss verbs. So the verb is the central unit of an English sentence. It is the nucleus. Nucleus, it means the basic building block. The basic building block of the sentence. So we build sentences around verbs. So the verb can refer to an action, or it can refer to a state. So verbs that refer to actions are verbs like run, walk, and talk. These are all things that people are doing, actions that are done by someone. So run, walk, and talk are 3 examples of action verbs. We also have state verbs that refer to states, like want, like have, and be. These are states in certain things that are conveyed through verbs. So someone who wants something, someone who has something, these are all states. Main verbs versus helping verbs. So each English sentence has a main verb. So if you look at the 2 examples here, Muhammad walked home. The verb walked is the main verb in this sentence. Khalid is happy. Is here is the main verb in this sentence. Some sentences also require one or more helping verbs. We can also call them auxiliary verbs. This is another name for helping verbs. So we have 2 examples here. He is coming to the meeting. You notice we have 2 verbs here, is and coming. So is the helping verb or the auxiliary verb, and coming is the main verb in this sentence. He could come here soon. We also have 2 verbs here. The first one could, and the second one come. So could is the helping verb. It is the auxiliary verb. It is actually a modal auxiliary, and come is the main verb of this sentence. He could come here soon. Helping verbs, auxiliaries, include the verb to be, which includes is, am, are, was, and were. These are all part of the verb to be. Helping verbs can also include have, has, and had. These are all words that can function as helping verbs. 3 do, does, did are also helping verbs. And modal auxiliaries like can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, and other modal auxiliaries. So these verbs can also function as main verbs, with the exception of modals. So the verbs in number 1, 2, and 3 can also be main verbs. So they can be helping verbs, and they can also be main verbs. Modal auxiliaries can only function as helping verbs, as auxiliaries. So we have an example here. He is here. Is the main verb in this sentence. So it can function as a helping verb, and it can function as a main verb. Okay, let's look at this exercise. Identify whether the underlined verb is the main verb or the helping verb of each sentence below. So if it is the main verb, you select A. If it is the helping verb, you select B. The first sentence, students like fast food. You notice that we have only one verb here, and it is underlined, like. So it is, of course, the main verb of the sentence. So number 1, the answer is A. Number 2, he has enough money for the trip. He has enough money for the trip. If you remember, we said has can function as a helping verb, but is it a helping verb in this sentence? Do we have another verb here? We don't. And here it is a stative verb. It's telling us that this person has something. He has money for the trip. So here has functions as a main verb. So number 2, has is a main verb. The answer of number 2 is A. Number 3, Khalid does not want to go to school today. So here we have does, and we also have the verb want. So does here functions as a helping verb, okay, because want is the main verb in this sentence. So does is a helping verb, so the answer of number 3 is B. Does is a helping verb. Number 4, he is helping me wash the dishes. The underlined verb is helping, and we have is before it. Is functions as a helping verb. and helping in this sentence, he is helping me, helping is the main verb. So the answer of number 4 is A. Helping is the main verb of this sentence. Number 5, he will arrive shortly. He will arrive shortly. We have two verbs here, will and arrive. Will is the helping verb and arrive is the main verb, and as I said, modal auxiliaries can only function as helping verbs. So will is a helping verb. The answer of number 5 is B. Now we move on to discuss transitivity. So verbs are divided into two groups based on transitivity. So the first group are intransitive verbs. Intransitive verbs are verbs that require no objects. So these verbs do not require an object to form a full sentence. So if you look at the example, birds fly. Birds fly. You notice the verb fly. There is no object after this verb, so it doesn't take an object. So birds fly is an intransitive verb. We call it an intransitive verb. This is a full sentence and it doesn't require an object. The man spoke. The man spoke. Spoke is an intransitive verb because it doesn't take an object. This is a full sentence. It's telling us that the man started speaking, he spoke. So this is an intransitive verb because it doesn't require an object. Number 2, the second type here is transitive verbs. So transitive verbs are verbs that require objects. So as opposed to intransitive verbs, these require objects to form full sentences. So we can further divide this group into two more types. The first type are monotransitive verbs. So the first type of transitive verbs are monotransitive verbs. Mono means one. So these verbs only require one object. So mono, only one. One object is required for these verbs. Look at the example. Khalid broke the window. Broke is a monotransitive verb because it only takes one object, the window. The window is the object of this sentence, and broke is a monotransitive verb because it requires only one object, the window. The other type are ditransitive verbs. Ditransitive verbs, these are verbs that require two objects. Di means two. Di means two, so ditransitive verbs take two objects. As we see in this example, Saleh gave Majid a pen. Gave is a ditransitive verb. It takes two objects. The first one is Majid and the second one is a pen. Saleh gave Majid a pen. So Majid is the first object and a pen is the second object. Gave is a ditransitive verb because it takes these two objects. So let's look at this exercise here. Decide whether the underlined verbs are intransitive, no objects, they don't take objects. B, monotransitive, they take one object. And C, ditransitive, they take two objects. So number 1, the student needs a pen. Here we have a pen, which is the object of the verb needs, only one object, so it is a monotransitive verb. So the answer of number 1 is B, monotransitive. Number 2, Ali told his friend a joke. Ali told his friend a joke. Here you will notice we have his friend and we have a joke. So two objects for the verb told. Told takes two objects here, his friend and a joke. So as we said, two objects, it is a ditransitive verb. So the answer of number 2 is C. Number 3, students study. Students study. This sentence here we have no objects. So this is a verb that doesn't take an object, so it is an intransitive verb. Okay, intransitive verbs don't take objects. Look carefully at number 4. So students study book. Students study books. Books here is an object, so this makes study a monotransitive verb because it takes one object. So books is an object, so the answer for number 4 is B, monotransitive. But we said that study is also an intransitive verb. So you should note that there are some verbs that can be either intransitive or transitive depending on the sentence. So as we have in the example here, study in number 3 is intransitive, and it can also be transitive, as in 4 here, study, it is monotransitive because it takes one object. So some verbs can be either intransitive or transitive. Direct versus indirect objects. As we looked in the previous section, ditransitive verbs take two objects. So we have a name for each of these objects. The first one is called a direct object, and the other one is called an indirect object. So the indirect object comes first. It comes first in sentences, and then it is followed by the direct object. So look at the example here. He gave me a book. Me is the indirect object of the sentence, and then a book is the direct object. So the book is the thing that is being given. Okay, so it is the direct object handled by the subject, by the speaker, or by the person who did the action. So he gave me a book. Me here is the indirect object, which is the person who received the book, who got the book. The indirect object is typically personal, so it refers to a person. Of course, there are some exceptions, but it is typically personal, as in me in the previous sentence, and the man in the following sentence. So he asked the man a question. Here, the man here is a personal object, personal noun, and it is an indirect object. So he asked the man a question. The man is the indirect object, and a question is the direct object. The indirect object is often equivalent to a prepositional phrase with to or for. So you can transform the indirect object to a prepositional phrase with to or for. So in the first example, he gave a book to me. So this sentence was originally, he gave me a book, but we can change it to a prepositional phrase and put the indirect object at the end and the direct object right after the verb. So he gave a book. A book here is the direct object. To me, the prepositional phrase here contains the indirect object. He bought a gift for his son. This was originally, he bought his son a gift. He bought his son a gift. His son was the indirect object. It came before the verb, and then it was followed by the direct object. But we can change it. He bought a gift. We can bring a gift right after the verb and form a prepositional phrase like this one, for his son. He bought a gift for his son, and this is the indirect object in this phrase. So these are the two ways to give equivalent phrases, prepositional phrases, to indirect objects. Okay, so this is the end of the first lecture. Hopefully you find it interesting, and you learn some certain things about grammatical structures. We will continue, inshallah, with other topics in the coming lectures. Thank you for listening.